Why can 2 billion Muslims not help Palestine? That's something I've been wondering myself, and let's see if we can find some answers today.
In India, armed groups set fire to a centuries-old mosque and library. In Myanmar, since the 70s, 1 million Muslims have been displaced from their homes and forced to migrate. More than 200 Uyghur children were put into prison by China for receiving Islamic education. And now we see the events going on for months in Palestine. As you're listening to this, somewhere in the world, Muslims are being persecuted. Thousands of murders and destruction have been going on.
Should be a NATO for Muslims.
There seems to be no end to these atrocities. You might ask, but brother, aren't we 2 billion Muslims? Why can't we protect our brothers and sisters? While there is no single state in the world with a population as large as the number of Muslims, why do we seem so few? When did we allow our voices
they're not
to be
practicing
silenced this
often.
much? How did we fall behind this far? There are things we cannot understand. Today, we will uncover the reasons for these questions, and we will get the solutions from the reasons themselves, because the answers are hidden exactly in these reasons. The conquest of Istanbul, formerly Constantinople, one of the turning points in human history,
Oh,
an
yeah.
event that closed one era and opened another. It is also one of the most critical events in the history of
Yeah, it's like interesting. Yeah, when you look at like history, like the Muslims back in the day, the Ummah was really strong on the deen, right? Like Islam was not just a culture or something like you have a Arabic name or something. No. It wasn't a culture. It was actually a lifestyle, right? And these days, may Allah guide the people. I mean, it's not anymore a lifestyle. It's more of a culture thing. Like, oh, I'm a Muslim because my father and grandfather and this and who so and so was a Muslim, right? So it has become more of a habit than a lifestyle, right? Like back in the day, it was like more of a lifestyle.
an event that closed one era and opened another. It is also one of the most critical events in the history of Islam. The famous Ottoman Sultan Mehmed the Conqueror, also known as Muhammad Fatih, wanted to conquer Constantinople with a great desire. However, conquering this place was not easy at all. Many nations had tried to take it several times, but no one had been able to succeed. Constantinople was a city with incredibly tough fortresses and an amazing defense structure.
Wow.
Something unprecedented had to be done to make it.
Look at this actually. Like, look at that wall right there. You even have like walls inside walls. Like, look at this. You have here like a wall, then you have your wall, you have a wall, you have a wall. Like, you have walls inside walls. Like, literally, look at that. They're like those sections, right, that have walls even.
And an amazing defense structure. Something
Of course.
unprecedented had to be done to make this conquest. Something that hadn't been tried before. The knowledge that was needed to achieve this was hidden somewhere in the world. The source of that specific knowledge was a master cannon maker, a Hungarian cannon master called Orban. He discovers an alloy, a mixture of metals, and with this unique alloy, he realizes that he could make very powerful cannons.
Oh.
During those times, Orban learns that Muhammad Fatih is going to besiege Constantinople. He's planning to sell this knowledge, but not to the Sultan. He first goes to the Byzantine Emperor. He says to him, "I'm a master cannon maker, and I've found a new type of alloy. With this invention, the cannonballs are much stronger and go much further. You can use it against them. I'm willing to give you this alloy, because I heard that the Ottomans are going to besiege this city. You can use it against them." The Byzantine Emperor gets very happy to hear this.
Of course.
He says, "Let's see the formula of this alloy." Orban says, "If you give me this much gold, I will give the parchment that the formula is written on." The emperor makes fun of him and says, "So you're telling us you're going to give us a piece of paper and want this much gold in return? Really?" And then he orders to his soldiers, "Throw this man into the dungeon." After a
Wow.
while, the news of this event reaches Muhammad Fatih. How? Because he has spies placed in Constantinople. They come and tell him what happened to the cannon maker. The Sultan gets excited and says, "Do whatever it takes to get that man out of the dungeon and bring him to me." The Sultan's men rescue Orban and bring him to the Sultan. Muhammad Fatih gives him twice the money he asked for and uses that alloy to build huge and deadly siege cannons.
Wow, that's a fair deal. Like, imagine this. Like, how must this cannon maker feel like, right? Like, not only does he get like into prison, right, and he gets like to get a prison break and taken out by the army of that guy that offers him even twice the amount of gold. So this guy even gets more rich and he gets freed from prison. So he really owes that guy, right? So that was a fair deal, right? Like he got his freedom back and twice the amount of gold. Like they could have just said, we give you no gold, but we're gonna free you from prison and you give us the formula. I think he still would have maybe said, okay, I'll do it because I don't want to rot in prison for the rest of my life. I prefer my freedom, so you get the formula for free. But no, instead of giving it out for free, they even give him the cash. Like they give him twice the gold. It was not necessary. It could have been the same amount or less or none at all and say, hey, the formula for your freedom, right? Like look at this.
Then the siege of Constantinople begins. And thanks to this extremely destructive weapon, serious breaches and holes are made in the city walls, and eventually the city is conquered. Just think about it. Something that couldn't be achieved for centuries was finally accomplished through this weapon, through this means. Now let's consider the opposite scenario. If the Byzantine emperor had said to the cannon maker in the first place, okay, take these gold coins and make the weapon, the result might have been very different. Can you see the value of knowledge, effort and struggle? There were a few things written on that piece of paper. But when you know it, you overpower and rule the other side.
Yeah.
Did you know that what we call brain drain is not a new thing? Muhammad Fatih tried his best to gather talented individuals and knowledgeable people in Istanbul during his period. He invited them with compliments and gifts. For example, Ali Kushçu, a genius in astronomy and mathematics. The Sultan spends a lot of money for him to come to his country. He invites him with his relatives and gives him 1,000 gold coins for each city he visits. Or let's go to another period. Have you ever heard of the Andalusian Umayyad state? It was a state that was at the top in terms of science and knowledge.
Yeah.
A famous physicist named Pierre Curie says, 30 books remained and passed on to us from Muslim Andalusia. And we were able to split the atom with them.
Wow.
The other books were destroyed during the Mongol invasion.
But this is true, like knowledge is power, right? Like it's even like that when you look at like wars, right? Like wars are done nowadays mostly by advanced technology. Like look at drones, like what drones can do, right? Like what certain night vision tanks and other like cannons, artillery and this and that can do, right? Like it's all about technology, right? Like you can have like a lot of people but no technology, and you can have few people with a lot of technology, and few people can overpower many people with technology. So yeah.
Pierre Curie also says, if half of the 1 million books that were burned had remained, you would have been traveling between galaxies in space by now. Have you ever heard of Ibn Sina, also known as Avicenna? He's called the master of physicians. His books were taught in Europe as textbooks for 600 years. Let's look at Jabir ibn Hayyan. He's considered the founder of chemistry. And then there is Al-Zahrawi, who is seen as the father of surgery. There are many more names like these. When knowledge was in our hands, we, Muslims, were the authorities, pioneers.
That's true.
It was like this during the time of the Andalusian Umayyad state, during the rise of the Ottoman Empire, and so on. Remember the time of the Prophet ﷺ. During the Battle of the Trench, Salman al-Farisi gives an idea, just a few sentences, and Muslims start to dig trenches. This action changed the course of the battle dramatically.
There's a tactical advantage
in this regard. On the one hand, a Muslim can choose to become a qualified, knowledgeable person, or he can choose to be someone who has never developed himself, who has never learned anything, who just eats, drinks, sleeps, and lives for pleasure.
Every
when
human
Muslims
being
become knowledgeable, competent, and qualified, the course of things start changing for the better.
True.
Because our religion itself tells us to have these qualities. Have you ever heard an ayah that says, stay away from knowledge? Or a hadith that says, just worship?
Yeah, I mean, what was the first thing that was said by Jibril to our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? It was Ikra, read, right? Read. So you can see already that there's a high importance in learning something, right? And it's actually the duty of every single Muslim to seek knowledge. Like, you don't just say the Shahada, you become a Muslim, and then you're like, oh, I said the Shahada, I'm a Muslim now. No. You have to seek knowledge. It's your duty as a Muslim. And even if you are born Muslim, it's still your duty to seek knowledge. You can't just say, oh, I'm born into something, I don't need knowledge. That's wrong. You have to seek knowledge. It's your duty.
Knowledge, or a hadith that says, just worship, do not research, do not improve yourselves. I mean, scientists are not considered witches in Islam, are they? On the contrary, our Prophet ﷺ says, seek knowledge even if you have to go as far as China.
Exactly.
The Quran repeatedly encourages us to think and research, saying, do they not reflect? Do they not contemplate? The progress or decline of Muslims depends on following these commandments of Allah. Normally, when we say the laws of Allah, we think of harams and acts of worship, don't we? But Allah has two different systems of law. The first one is religious laws, which include the things that are forbidden, that
Yeah.
are permissible, and worships. Halals, harams, ibadah, and so on. The second type of laws are the laws that Allah has set in creation, in the universe, also known as Sunnatullah. According to whether we obey the first type of laws or not, we see and receive the outcome after we die.
Yeah.
But the consequence of not obeying the second type of laws is directly experienced in this world.
Exactly.
And giving value to beneficial knowledge is one of those laws. So, as Muslims, what are the fundamental laws that cause us to be weak in our lives when we don't obey them? A great Islamic scholar, Bediüzzaman Said Nursi, answers this with a precise statement. Our enemies are ignorance, poverty, and conflict. Against these three enemies, we will make jihad with the weapons of art, knowledge, and unity.
Unity
We have
is
already
important
discussed
too.
what education and knowledge could do. Remember what Muhammad Fatih did. But what about the other two, poverty and conflict? What does Bediüzzaman mean by saying conflict? He means separation, division. There's an analogy that goes like this. When two heroes fight each other, even a child can beat them both. Meaning, when we as Muslims or Muslim majority states are in constant conflict with each other, when there's an atmosphere of dispute and
You can even apply this to daily life, right? Like when two heroes fight each other, even a child can beat them both. You could also say if you yourself are having a fight with yourself, you can't help the outside, or the outside can even destroy you. Like the same is like in every single aspect in life, right? If you are poor, you can't help the poor, right? So you have to be rich and strong yourself first. So you have to build yourself up to get into a position of strength, also financial strength, where you can help the poor people, right? When you are having conflicts at home, and you can't solve them at home, how are you expecting to solve the conflicts outside of home? Because you will be so distracted from your conflicts at home that you can't solve the ones outside, right? And yeah, this is like what I'm also thinking a lot is happening here with like a lot of so-called Muslim countries that have like a lot of corruption and issues from within, that they have like some sort of rebellions even inside their countries, that they themselves are so distracted with their internal affairs that they can't even really focus or put energy into outside affairs. And this is why I said like unity is also important, right? If a country they're having like corruption issues, rebellions, this and that, like even if they help the outside world, right, their problems maybe internally will increase, plus they will not be as effective.
Meaning,
Yeah.
when we as Muslims or Muslim majority states are in constant conflict with each other, when there's an atmosphere of
internal
dispute and
conflicts.
coldness between us, when we do not unite and stand together, inevitably we will fall behind. And then, who would be the happiest when Muslims fight with each other? The enemies of Islam, of course.
Yeah.
Why? Because when we are divided, it's easier for them to defeat us. Look, a Muslim individual or a Muslim community can make mistakes. We may see things that disturb us. But what is the solution when such things happen? Is it to become cold and distance ourselves from these Muslim individuals or groups? Is the solution to talk about them in a bad and destructive way? Is it right for one Muslim group to exclude, ostracize another Muslim group? No. Did you know that even Bedouins, the desert people of ancient Arabia, didn't used to do this? It is told that in the past there were two Bedouin tribes that used to be enemies to each other. They were at war. But when a bigger enemy from the outside came and attacked them,
They
made
united.
peace and fought the common enemy together.
Yeah.
In other words, because of our internal conflicts and animosity, we are weakening ourselves. Nowadays, a lot of people are attacking Islam. Muslims are under constant attack by harams, by many different states, anti-Islamic posts
And
in the media,
brainwashed, yeah.
harmful content on social media, and so on. At a time when we have so many enemies and
You know that it also is one of the biggest enemies that often gets overlooked by us because we see them as our brothers and sisters. Those are liberal Muslims. And why do I say they are enemies? Because you become like your friends, right? So let me give you an example. If you have friends that are constantly in haram relationships and they undermine the sin and say, oh, it's not so bad to have a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, like you adapt to their thinking and you start thinking like that. Or if you have those that wave the rainbow flag in your friend circle, and you have many of those, one day you start waving the rainbow flag, even though you know it's haram, right? So what we have to be very careful with is what sort of friends we have, and are they doing the dawah with us, or are we doing the dawah with them? Like, I'm not saying if you know someone that's like not practicing or misled or misguided that you shouldn't befriend them or reach out to them, but you have to be in a position where you are influencing them and they're not influencing you, if that makes any sense, right? Because those people that are misled or that are liberal Muslims, they need dawah themselves. They need to be guided. So you shouldn't totally abandon them. But if you are the minority in a majority of such people, you can drown in them, right? Like you literally as a practicing Muslim can drown inside of them and you're going under with them because you start becoming like them. Like we have to be very careful with liberalism because we can get to a point where like half of the Quran is being rejected and this is kufr. You can say, oh, this verse is authentic and correct, this one isn't, because the threat to Islam comes from such people that are liberal, because they could make it to a point where they really start, and this is the higher form of liberalization, where they start rejecting parts of Sahih Hadiths and Quran verses and stuff, and that actually takes them even out of the religion. So we have to be really careful that we don't get influenced by liberal people and that we are the ones influencing them. So I would always say for each Muslim that is especially living in the West or anywhere, try to have a strong group of friends of practicing Muslims and have a few individuals in your friend circle that are liberal. Why am I saying that? Because you have this strong group of practicing Muslims that are close to you, but then you have like a few individuals, like one and there and there and there, such and such, that you can do dawah with while still remaining in that strong group, right? So you need to have, first of all, good practicing brothers or sisters, and then you can pick single individuals that are liberal or not practicing, and you call them back. But if you leave your group of practicing brothers or sisters, you're just like that sheep that leaves the herd and the protection of the herd, and you get eaten by a wolf, right? So you have to be very careful with that.
So many enemies and need to stick together more than ever. How logical is it to be divided? So, not being able to see the bigger picture, not being aware of these threats, in other words, lack of education, leads to divisions. Meaning, the first item in Bediüzzaman's statement leads to the other one, conflict, division. So then, what happens when the lack of education and division come together? The third item emerges, that is, poverty. Have you ever thought how many of the world's famous brands are owned by Muslims? We got a very clear answer to this when the boycott lists against Israel were published. When our financial resources are not strong, our voices don't come out strong as well. I once heard an interesting observation. A researcher studying the Middle East said, I've seen that wherever poverty is high, crime rates automatically increase in direct proportion.
True.
So what does he mean by crime rates? Murders, thefts, cheating, etc. The poorer the country, the more crime there is. Because no one is born with a desire to commit crimes. If your financial situation is good, you don't feel the need to steal. You already have money and resources. When there's a problem, it's usually due to financial reasons. If you have the resources, you can easily solve your problems.
Like just look at ghettos in the States, right? Like where you have like certain blocks where there's like a lot of crimes. Those are usually the poor blocks that were like forgotten by society, or where people are being discriminated against. They are like viewed as second class citizens and stuff. And those are the people that form gangs and become violent and stuff. Like we have this in certain countries, like the US, for example, where there are some neighborhoods that are having a lot of crime issues, while you have those rich neighborhoods where there's barely any crime. And this is a good daily life example.
If not, and especially if religious education is weak, people are more inclined to resort to violence and commit crimes.
True.
Of course, needless to say, poverty leads to low quality education, which then leads to division. So ignorance, poverty, and division, all three trigger each other. But their opposites also trigger each other. Meaning, if one improves, the others start to improve as well. Here we realize that Bediüzzaman's statement is an incredibly accurate observation. Because these are exactly the things that make us fall behind. But can the course of all these events change? We all want to return to the glorious days of Islam, don't we? The days when Muslims were thriving and powerful. Days when no society was allowed to suffer oppression under the Muslim rule, whether they were Muslim or not. You may be asking, is this really possible? My brothers and sisters, do not think of the fall season as the end of life. Remember, when a tree sheds its leaves, it's not because its roots have permanently dried up, but because of the season. When spring comes, the leaves of the tree reappear, turn green, and its flowers bloom just as before. Just like this, as Muslims, if we struggle properly, if we work hard enough, it is possible that spring will come after this fall. The problem is not that the other side is too powerful. The problem is our negligence, our lack of care.
Yeah.
Instead of strongly holding on to the religion of Allah, we are moving farther and farther away from it. So the reason for the night is not the falling of darkness, but the withdrawal of the sun. Islam is the sun, and those who are enemies to it are the darkness. Just look at our past and look at now. Over time, they took the good qualities of Islam from us, and we took their bad qualities to ourselves.
Oh, that is so true. Oh, like the other day, well, I don't want to say which country it was. I watched a travelogue by a certain individual on YouTube, and this person went to a Muslim country somewhere, basically, and they were playing music everywhere on the street. You saw bars there, a lot of not so properly dressed women, astaghfirullah, were like walking around, and I was like, wait, aren't they supposed to wear like to cover up there and stuff? They have like night bars, nightclubs there, and this and that. And that's a country where over 90% of the population are Muslims. Like, how can this be a country with 90% plus Muslims? And they have like such places with like loud music playing, bars, nightclubs, women with short clothes and stuff. Like, I'm like, is that still a Muslim country? I can't tell the difference between a Western country and a Muslim country there, because I don't see anything Islamic there except the language, and people are Muslim by name, right? So if like Muslim countries turn into like this kind of countries, like, you know, the issue is with such, like, who gets affected the most? It's the children. Because why? The children see their parents live a certain lifestyle because they're the role models for the children. So if you have two non-practicing Muslims and they get a child, the child is most likely to follow in the parents' footsteps. There are exceptions that get hidayah, like guidance from Allah, right? But most of the kids get the influence, and the role models will be the parents, right? Like, they get the influence from the parents. So if the parents are not practicing, the mom is running out with like a mini skirt and has like a lot of like, it's going out a lot, maybe going dancing somewhere, right? Like belly dancer, whatever. The father is constantly smoking and doing riba and this and that. Like, how do you expect the child to be? Like, will a child become a mufti, a scholar or something in Islam? Very unlikely. Will a child study Islam in Medina in the future? Very unlikely. There are exceptions, but exceptions don't make the rule, right? So there's a problem. Like, if we are good Muslims, our children will be good Muslims. And if our children are good Muslims, it is more likely that their children are also good Muslims. So, yeah, we have to control and check ourselves and our behavior. And if we are being good, the next generation will be good.
Israel, Myanmar, India are not in the position of oppressors because they work hard. They are in that position because we are lazy. Because some of us are not even aware of our obligation to pray 5 times a day. Because we spend hours consuming empty content on the internet. Because we are living our lives without a dream, a vision for the future
role
of
models.
Islam. We boycott companies that support Israel, right? This is a good thing, but why can't we boycott our own nafs too? Our worldly comforts and desires? The devil is trying very hard to keep you away from struggling for Allah's deen and the Muslim ummah. He is trying different methods on you. He is trying to make you lazy, make you live your life without any goals, show no effort, procrastinate, bring all kinds of excuses or whatever you call it. So why don't we boycott these things either? Maybe you're thinking, well, but I'm just one person. What can I change with just my efforts? Did you forget what your Rabb says in Surah Ali Imran, ayah number 140? If you have suffered injuries, they suffered similarly. We alternate these days of victory and defeat among people, so that Allah may reveal the true believers, choose martyrs from among you, and Allah does not like the wrongdoers. This ayah means days of victory and defeat follow one another, and in this way, people of strong faith, qualified believers emerge. So Allah's system does not work the way you think. You're not expected to change everything in an instant. If we show the necessary sacrifice, patience and effort, Allah will elevate us. He will make us victorious. It's Allah who will grant victory. But except for a small group, we are not making enough effort to deserve this. When you put your head on your pillow at night, you're expected to say, Alhamdulillah, today I did this thing to serve Islam. You're expected to pray by saying, Oh Allah, make my tomorrow better than today. Doesn't your Lord say, Esta'idhu billah, قُلْ مَا يَعْبَأُ بِكُمْ رَبِّي لَوْلَا دُعَاءُكُمْ. Say, O Prophet, what would my Lord care for you if not for your supplication? So you need to pray with your tongue, with your heart, your body, your mind, your wealth, your dream, your efforts, with everything you have. Because praying is not just done with the tongue. Taking the necessary actions and making sacrifices are also forms of prayer.
Yeah.
If you don't take any action for Islam,
Like literally everything is an ibadah, right? Like even if you eat, you say Bismillah, right? So you eat in the name of Allah, basically, right? Like if you're giving dawah, it's a form of ibadah even. And I feel like the dawah is really lacking a lot these days. I'm actually very disappointed at the dawah here in Germany, in my region. I even thought about like going out by myself with a table and doing dawah alone, because I can't find groups here in my city that are doing dawah on the street. And I've been walking in the city for so long now, and I haven't seen a single table of people giving out the Quran or something. Like the dawah here in Germany is asleep. I don't see much dawah going on here, and this is very sad. And dawah is actually also something that gives you like a lot of hasanat, like a lot of reward, right? It's also a form of ibadah, but people are forgetting that this is actually one of the best things to do, to call others to Islam and have the religion grow. But yeah, people are just so comfortable in their homes, so busy with their own problems, and like I said earlier, like this is the thing. If you have internal problems, be it in a country, with yourself, in your household, right, and you're internally struggling, like it will affect the outside, because you're not going to be able to do anything. And this is probably also, yeah, why 2 billion Muslims can't help Palestine, because they're having inner conflicts with either themselves, with their families, or in their country. And if you can't get your stuff together, like you're not going to be able to help the outside, right? You can just say words like, oh, I want to help, but how do I help? Oh, I will help later. Yeah, later is too late. Do it now. Do something now. Fix your stuff. Get your problem solved, and then finally help the people that need you. Don't just wait.
Israel will kill another baby in Palestine. Another mosque will be set on fire in India.
Yeah,
another Muslim will be displaced from their home in Myanmar. If you don't take any action, another
Exactly.
Muslim woman in East Turkestan will be forced to remove her hijab. Don't forget our biggest enemies: ignorance, poverty, and division. We will strongly hold on to our religion and take action against these. Are you asking, where do I start? How do I take the first step? But the reality is, we have already taken it, because the first step was to ask this question, and you have done it now. That's an accomplishment in and of itself. Then the second step is setting a goal. If you don't set a goal for yourself, no matter how eager or excited you are to do something, the excitement for it, your motivation will only last a week. Do you have any field of interest? Then get to an advanced level in that. Let the one who people look up to in that field be a Muslim. Do you have a talent for something? Find a way to use it for Islam, for Muslims.
We all have a
children?
certain talent.
Raise them by making them love Islam. Teach them their religion. Do you have non-Muslim friends in your workplace,
Do
school,
dawah.
or neighborhood? Or do you have Muslims around you who don't practice their faith? Learn and practice your religion in the best way you can. Let your body language, the way you carry yourself, your life as a whole represent Islam to the outside. For example, set goals for yourself to learn your religion better. If you want to make a big improvement in Islamic knowledge in a short time, you can take advantage of the video series that we put together. In other words, whoever you are, do something against ignorance, division, and poverty. And when the time comes, let the major actors of Islam who will change the course of events emerge. And let them see a great crowd behind them that preserves and lives Islam. And become one of those.
It has become a lifestyle.
Let's end the video with a short story that will summarize everything we have talked about. A story that has been told for generations. Once upon a time, there was a carpenter that crafted a beautiful pulpit. The beauty of this pulpit became so famous that its fame spread throughout the region. It was such an amazing work of art that some people came and expressed their desire to buy it. However, the carpenter refused to sell it and say, I have made this pulpit for Masjid al-Aqsa. But at that time, Jerusalem was under the control of the Crusaders, and they were very powerful. Those who heard his response said, you're dreaming. How can this be put in Masjid al-Aqsa while Jerusalem is ruled by the Crusaders? The carpenter said, I'm a carpenter. What I can do is to make the pulpit. This is my duty. And when the time comes, a commander rises and conquers Jerusalem. And that is his duty. Among the audience, there was a child who was listening carefully to every word.
He became the commander, what?
These words penetrated his heart that was full of iman. Years pass, that child grows up, gathers his army, and conquers Jerusalem, and places that pulpit in Masjid al-Aqsa.
Allahu
In
Akbar.
history, he is known as Salahuddin Ayyubi.
Wow, Allahu Akbar, what a beautiful story. But that's a good story because we all have a certain part that we can do. Like I said, we all have certain talents. One is maybe good at, for example, giving dawah to others, right? Another one is very, very good at writing books and can write books about Islamic knowledge, right? Another person is really good at teaching the Quran and can teach Quran to the kids, for example, right? Like we all have certain talents. Some of us are maybe astrophysicians or very good at math. Like we all have something that we are good at, and if we're using it for our ummah, for Islam, and in the name of Allah, and we are being role models in with our behavior, akhlaq as Muslims, with our practice of the deen, and in our profession that we are good in, we can influence others in a positive way and change the world, right? It's like it's like we are building a castle, right? Together, for example, and everyone puts down a stone. This stone goes into this corner, has this shape, this stone has this shape, goes into this corner, and if we all put our stone down, our talent, what we are good at, and we all put it into this corner or where it matches in, we create like a beautiful thing together, right? And that's like how we should view this in ourselves. Like we have to sort our problems, fix them, and then do what we can, like in a good way, in the best that we can, right? In the name of Allah. Yeah, this is very important. Like I really hope like that this in Palestine will soon be solved. I actually saw a conversation the other day of Habib with Trump, and if Trump happens to become the president, right, he said he will stop the conflict in Palestine. Like I hope he's right, and if he really becomes the president for some reason, that he actually stops this, because this is horrible. Like I can't see those images anymore. Like I become depressed when I look at this. Like this is too much for my heart, for my eyes, for my head, for my mind. Like I don't want to see the people, the kids struggle anymore in Gaza. Like this needs to stop. Like Palestine needs to become now finally independent, needs to be under protection, and there should be no more harm done there. Like may Allah protect the people in Palestine. Ameen. But yeah, if you guys are new to this channel, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more content. And if you found this video informative, please don't forget to give this one a thumbs up. And I will see you guys next time, inshallah.